Are you tired of not being able to see what's printing in your D7? Today I'm going to show you how to turn this into this. The Wanhao D7 is a real bargain. Considering just how cheap it is, I reckon its build quality is pretty outstanding. In the interest of saving money, however, there is one component which is pretty hefty and could be refined. That's the lid. This lid is very sturdy, but it's really over-engineered for what you need. Despite the fact it makes a pretty entertaining helmet, it's really bad for seeing what's actually happening on your prints. It's never fun to wait hours and hours just to find the print has failed. I mean, you can lift it up and peek, but you risk bumping the printer and introducing some artifacts into your print. Now, there are some really nice designs on Thingiverse and elsewhere on the internet. They do look really good, but all of them require a big investment in time and in some cases, money. Today I'm going to show you how to make this window for the lid of your D7. It's cheap, easy to do, and filters out all the light that will kill your resin prematurely. Let's begin. Job number 1, mark and measure some cardboard. I went for 130mm wide by 220mm tall because that was pretty close to the size that I had on my last one, and I was pretty happy with that. After that, I used a very sharp knife to cut out the cardboard, ready to position on top of the cover. Doing so is extremely important because this positioning now is how you're going to cut later on. I'm using the masking tape to mark out around the outside of the cardboard so I know exactly where I need to cut. This is probably a good time to get a square or something like that, or even use your ruler to make sure everything is even the whole way around. Once again, you can't be too careful in this bit, so take your time, be as accurate as you can. As the saying goes, measure twice, mark once. Last thing you need to do is put a few bits of tape in each corner, coming in at roughly a 45-degree angle. We're going to mark those next. Now, before we go any further, we're going to explain a few things and check a couple of things too. Firstly, the material for the window. You can't just pick any clear plastic that you find at the hardware store. It's very important that it's UV blocking. For this project, I'm using some orange acrylic which I have as offcuts from a laser cutter enclosure. It's designed to filter out light with a wavelength of 445 nanometers. The light needed to cure the resin in our 3D printers is somewhere between 400 and 450, so I found this really suitable so far. Although this stuff's pretty thick, you probably have success with using something a lot thinner as long as it blocks UV light. It's probably worth visiting your local hardware store and visiting the roofing section. They've probably got all types of plastic there that are thin and block out UV light. The next thing that you absolutely must get right is making sure the size of your bit that you've marked is smaller than your piece of plastic. You can see here that my offcut is pretty perfect for my needs. There's very little I need to trim, yet it's still long enough that I can attach it with rivets in the corners after I've cut it down. Please make sure you check this before you cut anything on your case. Now I'm guessing you're wondering what these weird bits of tape are on the angle coming in from the corners. For this next step we have two options, either a hole saw or a step drill. What we're aiming to do is to mark a point that is the exact offset of the radius of our cutter. The first step here is to measure the outer diameter of your step drill or hole saw. Mine was 27mm, so what I did was come down 13.5mm from the edge across and 13.5mm sideways as well. Then I do a straight line between the two, and finally I drew a little arc here just as a preview of what the final cut was going to look like. Here's all of our marking and measuring finished, and we're ready to proceed. We've successfully marked all 4 corners, so time to hit the workshop to do some drilling and some cutting. If you have a center punch, now is the time to use it. Basically, you hit it with a hammer and it puts a little indentation in metal before you drill, and it stops the drill bit from sliding around at the start of your process. Once you've done that, you can now come with the drill, carefully placing it in the little indentation you made, and then going full speed, pushing down as hard as you can. Be very careful as it breaks through initially because you could damage your metal. After that, keep applying the pressure while bracing the frame because it will flex a little bit until you've gone through each of the 4 corners. It's going to be pretty hard to be super accurate here, but try your best and take your time if need be. Once your drilling is done, it's time to brush off all of our metal shavings. It's extremely important to keep on doing this throughout because we don't want them to build up and eventually find their way into our printer. It's time to remove our old masking tape. Doing so will get rid of any shavings that are stuck underneath and prevent scratching of the case. It'll also give you a chance to reapply and line them up perfectly with the outside edges of the circle. What we're aiming for is our straight line to come smoothly to the outer perimeter of the circle. Here I'm using a jigsaw, but you could use a hacksaw or any other cutting tool that goes through metal easily. The way I'm cutting this right now is actually a really poor example because my head is over my left hand and the jigsaw is far away on the right. This was the worst cut I did by far because I couldn't really see what I was doing accurately. This cut, however, I did a much better job. That's because I had the cutter in line with my head and I went a lot slower. Every couple of seconds I would stop to make sure I was still on track and make a fine adjustment if need be. Now for the obligatory safety message. I have safety glasses here because there's hot, small iron filings flying for my eyeballs. If you value your eyeballs and you like doing things like having vision, then you should definitely wear safety glasses too. It only takes a couple of seconds and it could make a difference for the rest of your life. Continuing to cut here, almost finished. The last piece will be very annoying and try and bend under its own weight as you go. Just try and be as steady as you can and then you'll be able to get it off. Here there was still a slight jagged edge, so I used the jigsaw to go back and forth and clean it up a little bit. Time to pull off the masking tape. Make sure you get it all, including rubbing off any smudges or glue on the surface. At this point I broke out a file and I decided to try and deburr the edge. Some edges were better than others, and you'll find that angling it like this will help keep it straight and stop it from digging in and putting in grooves. I still had one really wonky side, so what I needed to do was get out the jigsaw and trim it a little bit. After this I put my piece of acrylic down, and once again I used some masking tape to cut the bit that I was going to remove on the table saw. If you don't have one of these, you can use the jigsaw once again. If you do have one of these, please take care. Any little accident here is going to be catastrophic. Imagine falling over on this or losing a finger in the blink of an eye. Take your time, and there'll also be a lot of acrylic that tries to fly up in your face, so make sure you're wearing a face shield to get ready for that. Now it's safe to say that probably wasn't the straightest cut I've ever done, but I did manage to correct it with the file a little bit. I also should have taken my time a little bit more when hole sawing through the corners. There are some bits where some parts spun out and have scratched the surface. There is a way, however, to cover both of these sins, and it's actually right in front of us. Along the bottom of the stock D7 case is this excellent wraparound rubbery stuff. Now you can buy this from hardware stores to seal the edges of windows and things like that. I did, however, find the exact same stuff as what's on our Duplicator 7, except in black. All the dimensions are exactly the same. It's meant for sheet metal with a minimum of 1.2, which matches our Duplicator case, and it's perfect. At this point it would be an ideal time to apply it around the perimeter of our hole. It'll help seal the inside and cover the jagged edges. I did order some of the black trim from eBay, but obviously it hasn't come yet. Because I'm impatient, I'm going to pull off the red off my second lid, and when the black stuff comes, I'm going to use it to reapply to that one, and then I'll have one in red and one in black. Time to apply the red trim strip and then drill the holes ready to rivet. Now the first thing I have to do is acknowledge the fact that I just lied. I did end up drilling first, and for that I'm really sorry. What I wanted to do was make sure I could drill before the trim strip was in the way and made it potentially uneven. Make sure you correctly size your drill bit to match the rivet you're going to use, and you'll have to push pretty hard on the second bit, so maybe brace the container so it doesn't bend. Now we take the trim strip from the old one and we very carefully push it around the edge. This is doing a really good job of getting rid of the burrs and the other sharp bits on the edge of the case. This is a slow but ultimately satisfying process. As you apply pressure, it'll resist you, then all of a sudden it'll slip on. Fortunately, the old one is a little bit too long, so what you need to do is get it tight, then get a set of sharp cutters and cut it off, and then push it back into the center so they kind of jam up against each other and have a really nice tight fit. There are two things that you must get right with your rivets. The first is the drilling diameter, which hopefully you already did. The second is the reach or length of the rivet on the inside. You can see here my acrylic is about 5 mils thick, so an ordinary rivet won't reach through to the bottom and be able to secure it to the case. Here I use a quick release clamp to hold it in place and act as a second set of arms. It's pretty hard to line up the rivets while you're trying to hold the acrylic as well, so this clamp was a godsend. Once I was ready, I put my first rivet through, peeling back the trim strip because it was slightly overlapping, and then I removed the trim strip back in the way to hold the rivet in place. These thick rivets are hard work, at least there's only 4 to do. Well, here's the finished product. It's not too bad, but it's definitely not the best work I've ever done. There are a few bits where unfortunately I managed to scratch the surface, and I could have colored them in with a black Sharpie, but it's probably going to still be there, so I'm just going to have to live with it. I think the red trim strip against the orange window is probably a bit of an acquired taste in terms of color. I think the black stuff is going to look a lot better and a lot more subtle when it comes. Looks aside, it has delivered the function that it promised. I can now see inside to see how my prints are going, and I don't have to wait several hours to see if they're actually working or not. Unfortunately, on a D7, you can't see through the vat, which means the first hour or so of your print is still not going to know what's going on. At least after that point, you'll be able to look through the window and work out whether your print is going well or not. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos on how to get the best out of your Wanhao Duplicator 7. G'day, it's Michael again. If you liked the video, then please click like. If you want to see more content like this in future, click subscribe and make sure you click on the bell to receive every notification. If you really want to support the channel and see exclusive content, become a patron. Visit my Patreon page. See you next time.